What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller from Hook'emHeadlines.com coming back at y'all today with another transfer breakdown. I believe this is the first hoops one that we've done on the channel. But Texas landed a commitment out of the portal to cap the weekend. It was on the evening of April 23rd from UVA redshirt junior center, Kadin Shedrick. Shedrick is a 6'11", 220-pound fourth-year big man out of UVA. He entered the transfer portal earlier this month and had a lot of interest coming his way. Ended up narrowing his list down to about 5 schools. I believe the list was Duke, Mizzou, Texas, Xavier, and then I'm missing one on that list. But it looks like Texas, Mizzou, and Duke were three of the schools that Shedrick was narrowing his decision down to. And after visiting Texas and Mizzou last week, he ended up picking Texas on April 23rd. He's the first portal commit for Texas. This is a really big win in the portal, very much needed win as well for Rodney Terry. This weekend brought a lot of good news for the Longhorns basketball program. You heard Dylan DeSue returning to Texas, as well as Shedrick committing to Texas out of the portal. Hopefully soon we'll be getting some good news from the Oral Roberts transfer guard Max Asmus, but for the time being, let's take a look here at Shedrick and what he brings to the table for the Longhorns. If you're not familiar with the transfer breakdowns we do for football, it's going to be similar for this basketball video. I'm going to talk about his recruitment, his journey at UVA, kind of what got him to this point, his strengths, really what his game looks like, and then how he fits at Texas and what his trajectory on the 40 will look like. Let's go ahead and start with his recruitment. He was a highly recruited kid out of Holly Springs in North Carolina. That's around the Raleigh-Durham area, so kind of around that UNC Duke college hoop stronghold. But 4-star kid, rated as the number 68 prospect in the nation in the 2019 class, according to the 247 Sports Composite, as well as a top 20 center. He had quite a few offers coming out of high school. More than 30 schools offered him, and ultimately chose Virginia over offers from schools like Xavier, Baylor, Florida, among a bevy of other major conference schools. So he kind of stayed local there, but he didn't really make much of an impact out of the gates at UVA. In his first year under head coach Tony Bennett, he ended up taking a red shirt. That was during the 2019-20 season. He did crack the rotation for the first time in the 2020-21 season. Played in 11 games, just kind of in a rotational role, 7.8 minutes per game off the bench, averaged around 2.5 points, 2 rebounds, half a block. So not making much of an impact on the Who's in his first season in the rotation. But he really had his breakout campaign during the 2020-21 or 2021-22 campaign. As a redshirt sophomore, averaged still to this day at a career high 7 points per game, 5 rebounds, around 1 steal and 2 blocks. You really started to see a lot of the a lot of the defining parts of Shedrick's game coming to the forefront during his second year in the rotation. That kind of rim-running, fluid big man that he kind of became known for at UVA in the last 2 seasons, started to get molded then. Kind of held a spot between the starting 5 and kind of just the core part of the rotation. Again, this past season at UVA, I should mention he started 19 games, played 35 total, averaging around 21 minutes per game during the 21-22 season. That actually moved down to 15 starts and 30 games played, around 17.5 minutes per night this past season. Again, similar stat line, but averaged around 6 points per game, 4 rebounds, 1 steal, 1.5 blocks. He did improve, I think, in a lot of the more intricate statistical areas, shooting percentages, things like that. He improved his overall efficiency as well this past season, year over year at UVA. Posted a career best, 24.9 player efficiency rating, 8.2 box plus minus, and 0.232 win shares per 40. If this kind of gives you an idea of, even though maybe he wasn't really stuffing the box score, the stat sheet, whatever you want to say, stat sheet stuffer in the last 2 seasons. If you want to get an idea of his type of impact on winning at UVA, he registered more than a half dozen win shares in the last 2 seasons combined. at Virginia. I really thought that he, again, despite the lack of like kind of eye-popping stats at UVA, that Shedrick was one of the better portal players available early this offseason. 247 Sports has him rated as one of the top 20 transfers in this portal class. One of the things I want to do here is also take a look at some of the numbers that, like some of the more intricate and advanced stats, tracking stats, things like that Shedrick put up at UVA, as well as some of the defining characteristics of his game to give you a better idea of what, again, what his strengths are and, what his game looks like. I mentioned earlier that, he's kind of that vintage big, like kind of big body, rim running big man, 6'11", 220 pounds, moves pretty good foot speed, wingspan above 7 feet. So in terms of length and fluidity, checks a lot of the boxes there. But there's some other defining characteristics to his game as well that make him stand out beyond the fact of just being a rim running big man. They can put home lobs, dunks, they can protect the rim, rebound well, things like that. He's got good footwork, his off-ball awareness, his generic basketball IQ, coordination, hands, all are solid. I think that there's a little bit more that he can do in terms of improving his agility and timing. When he's switching 8-10 feet from the basket, when he has to cover out further from the rim, he can get caught from time to time, but we'll get into that a little bit more later. All around, though, a lot of what you would expect out of a 6'11" big man, he does really, really well. And just, again, basketball IQ, intelligence, things like that, I can't emphasize enough. He's a very smart player. He can also draw out on the offensive end of the floor. He's a good screener. That length does come in handy there, as well as that lateral, or I'd say improving lateral agility. But yeah, let's take a look at some of the stats here that, kind of caught my attention, when I was kind of breaking down his game, looking at film, things like that. One thing that really caught my eye, I mentioned that he runs the floor pretty well and he's good in transition. This past season at UVA, he ranked in the 97th percentile in Division I in terms of points per possession on transition plays, 1.54 points per possession in transition. So, again, someone just as a runner, someone that can put home lobs or at the rim, whatever that be. He's a very, very solid player in transition, and I think that's really going to help this Rodney Terry in the system where he does like to play up tempo quite often. Texas is definitely going to be playing at a faster pace than Shedrick did in that UVA system. So I think that part of his game is going to translate really well. Something else that stuck out to me, just in terms of his ability to get extra possessions and just be a force on the glass. Again, ranking in the 97th percentile on offensive rebounds for putbacks, 1.6 points per possession last season at UVA. And, something else that really caught my eye when looking at some of the situational and tracking stats for Shedrick, another area that he ranked in the 97th percentile in Division I this past season at UVA was offensive rebounds. He averaged 1.6 points per possession. Essentially, that means that whenever he got a putback or had the opportunity for a putback, that, he was pretty much money. And I think the craziest thing to me is that on 12% of possessions where it was possible, he ended up getting a putback. His offensive rebounding percentage last season at UVA was pretty impressive as well. Around 9%, and for his career, 10%. So, again, solid on the offensive glass. And then one other tracking stat that really caught my eye was just his points per possession and field goal percentage at the rim. He had a field goal percentage around 76% at the basket this past season at UVA. That ranked for the 97th percentile in the country. You'll notice a lot of 97th percentile for him. But 1.52 points per possession on possession or on shots at the rim. Excuse me. So he's about as automatic as it gets. One other interesting note that I found, this is more of an intricacy of his game, but it really goes to show that Shedrick, even though a lot of his finishes are just, getting the ball dumped to him near the basket and, either using a pretty solid variety of post moves, nothing elite in terms of his ability as a back to the basket scorer, but still a decent array of post moves. Solid. He's a solid fundamental big man when he has the ball in his hands on the offensive end. But that, he can really get it done at the free throw line as well. A lot of teams put him at the free throw line often. He led the ACC in free throw attempt rate last season at 66.7%, which is a crazy high rate. But he also shot the ball at a clip of 79.5% from the charity stripe. So when you measure the stats up side by side, shooting 76% about on field goal attempts at the rim, and he's shooting 79.5% from the line. So whether he's getting put on the free throw line or just getting the ball dumped to him near the basket, if you get the ball in his hands, more than likely you're getting points out of it. On the defensive end of the floor, again, very, very stout. Averaged around 2 blocks per game in the last 2 seasons combined at UVA. Defensive box plus minus at UVA 4.9. If you just look at the last 2 seasons, it's north of 5.5. He also ranked at the top 5 in each of the last 2 seasons in defensive box plus minus among big men. But I think the block percentage is what stood out to be most statistically about Shedrick. He was one of just 2 players in the ACC in each of the last 2 seasons to have a block percentage in the double digits. The only other one was probably the best defensive big man, at least, if not the best, one of the best defensive big men in the ACC this past season, Jesse Edwards of Syracuse. So, all around solid defensive game. He's going to be a real force to be reckoned with down low for Texas, to give Texas another rim protector. And the numbers really speak for themselves in that regard. I think just in terms of by the numbers, it does a nice job of painting the picture of what type of player Texas is getting in Shedrick. Again, solid rim running big man. You can dump it down low near the basket. He's going to be a solid finisher, one of the best rim finishers in all of college hoops, I think, just in terms of efficiency. Solid rebounder. I think you're going to see a slight boost in his rebounding numbers at Texas, but we'll get into that here in a moment. And, I think a guy that can really draw out, help you in the pick and roll, set screens, even if you want to draw him up near the 3-point line. He wasn't used a ton in pick and roll at UVA, but like in terms of actually being the roll man, but he's someone that, again, can finish at the basket. And then again, on the defensive end, force on the glass. I guess this is one more thing I wanted to mention, but just really, really disruptive as well in one-on-one defense. Ranked second in points per possession allowed in one-on-one defensive matchups on guarded jump shots in the ACC last season. Players that were matched up with him tried to shoot contested jumpers, shot just 14.3% from the field, averaged just under 0.4 points per possession. And both of those marks good for second best in the ACC last season. So I think that kind of gives you an idea of what you're getting with Shedrick. Again, really, really solid post presence on both ends of the floor. Good in transition as well. In terms of how he fits at Texas, I think this is more of a nuanced conversation. I've seen a lot of, kind of back and forth out there, just people pitching different ideas of how he could work as a two-man combination with Dylan Dessou, or potentially Ron Holland. I do think that there's a way that you can make it work between Kadin Shedrick and Dylan Dessou as the starting bigs for Texas, probably with Dessou at the 4 and Shedrick at the 5. I think for that to work, Dessou's going to have to be able to pull out to the 3-point line a little bit more, kind of find some of that 3-point range he had a few seasons ago at Vanderbilt, where he was shooting 37% from deep. He was a really solid threat from the mid-range this season, especially during the postseason in the Big 12 tournament. That jump shot from 12 to 17 feet, that floater game as well from the free throw line was really, really lethal. So, if he can kind of find that part of his game, maybe draw some bigs on opposing teams away from the basket, that can open up some advantageous matchups for Shedrick one-on-one down low. I think that could work. My limitations to that combination, beyond the fact that just they're not two necessarily traditional big men, but they're, two guys 6'9" or taller that, Dessou, outside of one season, hasn't been an extremely established three-point shooter, so you might have limited floor spacing, but also neither one of them is really a established playmaker or distributor of the basketball. Dessou can create his own shot, but Shedrick is not known for that. Neither one of them can facilitate the offense from inside the arc either, like you would have had last year, and a guy like Timmy Allen that can get a few dimes per game and really can make a lot of things happen in terms of finding his teammates or creating his own looks from the elbow or mid-range. So, I think that those two reasons of just limited floor spacing and lack of facilitation within the arc, would be two reasons for them not to be used together on the floor a ton. I think that there's more potential for each of them with a guy like Ron Holland in the lineup, or, maybe even if you want to go a little bit smaller, if Texas ends up getting a solid wing out of the portal this offseason, that's something that could work as well. But his fit at Texas, I think that there's a way to make it work with Dessou. I think there's a lot of potential with a guy like Holland that's just such an explosive athlete and that can make a lot of things happen within the arc. Playing with Dessou or Shedrick. So I really like the fit there. A lot of it is yet to come together, though, because there's still so much left to be determined in terms of how Rodney Terry is going to build out this roster. Shedrick, I think, is the first of many portal commits to come, or at least first of probably 3 or 4. But yeah, ultimately, if I had to put some guesses on it or educated guesses in terms of what Shedrick's numbers are going to look like this season, I do think he's going to get higher volume touches than he did at UVA. Again, I mentioned Texas is going to play at a faster pace than he played at UVA last season. And he averaged, about 6 points, 4 rebounds, 1.5 blocks. I think that more realistically, he's looking around 8-9 points per game, maybe even 10, probably around 6 rebounds. I think he can get up to that mark of 2 blocks. With that same kind of measure of efficiency that he had at UVA, he's still going to have a solid supporting cast at Texas. And, while the Big 12 is a tough basketball conference, he has a lot of tough games under his belt that he played with UVA in the ACC. So I think level of competition, that's going to translate pretty well for him. But yeah, again, overall, I think this is a really solid initial get for Texas. It helps them get, kind of this established top 3 in the front court with Holland and Dessou and Shedrick. And it gives, Terry some momentum to build off in the portal now. But yeah, anyway, for Andrew Miller, Hook'emHeadlines.com, that's pretty much it for the first transfer breakdown of the offseason. Hopefully first of many good ones to come. So that's pretty much it. Hook 'em.